Channel number 9. Class 9. This session is for you. It's a science session based on the topic cell, the fundamental unit of life. This is the first part of this session, and second part definitely will come later. But in this first part, we are going to talk about the cells, the bacteria, and a lot of things. So if you have any questions regarding this, you have studied the chapter and you have some queries, you clarify. And as well, NCERT official. In the live chat box, you can write down your questions and send it to us. We'll receive them instantly, and our expert who is with us, she'll be more than happy to answer all of them. Let's meet her, and we have with us Mrs. Reena Mohapatra. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, Tanvi. Good afternoon, viewers.
Good afternoon, ma'am, to you too. Ma'am is a former PGT teacher at DAV School, Bhubaneswar. So let's not waste any more time. And ma'am, shall we begin?
Yes.
Okay.
So today,
yes.
Already been told. Shall I start? So
yes,
I'm starting it now.
Please
start. So today our session is on cell. So in this session, as has been already told by Ms. Tanvi, we'll here do about different types of cell. We'll learn about its historical background to some extent, not much, and we'll learn about what are the different types of organisms basing on the nature of cells. We'll learn in details about prokaryotic cells, eukaryotic cells, and we'll also learn about components of a eukaryotic cell. Okay, so without wasting our time, let's start it. As time is very short. Okay, now cell had been in 1665 for the first time. It had been discovered by Robert Hooke. He invented his own microscope. As you can see, it's a very primitive type of microscope. It was rather on the slightly bigger version of simple microscope, and he observed a piece of cork here. Okay, a cork, all of you know, which is used as lid for closing some reagent bottles, etc. It's a plant product, and this cork he observed, and what he could observe, honeycomb-like structures. In Latin, cellula means small compartments. So this idea came to his mind, so he called these structures as cells. Later, in 1676, Antonie van Leeuwenhoek, he observed several living cells. See, Robert Hooke had observed dead cells, dead cork he had observed, but Leeuwenhoek had observed several living cells, and for that he had invented his own microscope. This was also a combination of several lenses, not like today's microscope, but that was the beginning of journey towards cytology. So he had observed several cells, and not only that, he had made very good diagram, and he had recorded his findings also. Later, after a few years, Robert Brown had discovered a nucleus. It was a densely staining structure inside plant cell, and he called it as nucleus. It was in 1831. After that, say 1831, he had discovered nucleus, but before that, at 1676, Leeuwenhoek had discovered some cells. He had observed some cells, but see the gap. After that, after Leeuwenhoek, around 200 years, nothing much had been done in regard to cell. In 1838, Malthus Claydon and 1839, Theodor Schwann, two of them, Schleden had observed plant materials and Schwann had observed animal materials, but at two different parts of the world. And that time, there was some communication possible. So, and then they had given their views separately. From their views, gradually their findings had been collected and then a theory has been formed which is called as cell theory. Cell theory states that all the organisms are made up of cells and cell products. Cell is the structural and functional unit of all the living organisms. What does it mean? Cell is the structural and functional unit. Cell, without cell, a living organism's body cannot be made. Whatever you see human being, you see us, wherever you see cells are present. Sometimes you may ask that in nail cell is not there, in hair cell is not there, but they are made up of cell products. So cell is the structural unit and functional unit too. That means a cell is like a small laboratory inside which several chemical reactions are taking place. And as a result of these several chemical reactions, what is there? That life activities are taking place. Rudolf Virchow later added another statement that cells arise from pre-existing cells. That if cells are not there, new cells cannot be formed. So these 3 points together, today we regard them as cell theory. Depending on the number of cells, certain organisms are made up of single cell and most of the organisms are made up of more than one cells. So depending on the number of cells in an organism, organisms are divided into unicellular organism and multicellular organisms. Here are some examples of unicellular organisms. You can find Chlamydomonas, this is amoeba, this is bacteria, and this is euglena. These unicellular organisms, each organism is made up of a single cell and all the functional activities to sustain that organism living is taking place inside that living cell. So it's a bit confusing. Is it an organism or is it a cell? So, some scientists prefer to call unicellular organisms as cellular organisms for this purpose. Here, organism is equivalent to a cell. Multicellular organisms, naturally, their multi means many, so they are made up of more than one cells. Starting from plants again, starting from algae to flowering plants, and starting from a very small animal to human beings, up to human beings, all are made up of cells. And naturally, depending on the size of the organism, number of cells per organism varies. But very curiously, the type of cells in these organisms are more or less same. Let's see, is the cell only one type or cells are of different types? Now here, we can divide the cells in different ways. We can see different types of cells are there. But here on this slide, what you see here, we have divided cells basing on the nature of the nucleus. Nucleus is the controlling center of the cell. We find that depending on the presence or absence of nucleus, cells can be divided into two types, prokaryotic cell and eukaryotic cell. In these two terms, you have got one thing in common. Did you see it? It is karyon. Karyoterm is there. Karyoterm has come from karyon. Karyon itself means nucleus. Pro means primitive. Eu means advanced. So prokaryotic cells are those cells which possess no proper nucleus. True nucleus is absent in them. Eukaryotic cells are those which possess a full-fledged, definite, prominent nucleus. On the basis of nucleus, we have divided cells into prokaryotic and eukaryotic, But not only the nucleus, prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells vary in many more characteristics. Gradually we'll learn about them. Here are examples of some prokaryotic organisms. Here can you see, and this is the first one, this is the mycoplasma. Mycoplasma is made up of a single cell. Whatever you see here, this is a single cell. Here, did you see this coiled structure which is present? What is it? It is DNA. There is no nucleus. DNA is remaining directly embedded inside cytoplasm. This is a bacteria and this is cyanobacteria or so-called blue-green algae. These are the examples of prokaryotic organisms.
Okay.
In these two cases, that mycoplasma and bacteria are made up of single cell, so they come under unicellular organisms. What about this? In blue-green algae, you can find many cells. It seems as if they're made up of many cells,
Right.
but actually these cells are individual cells. They have just aggregated. So we cannot call them as multicellular organism. Rather, we call them as colonial organisms. Because although they look as if they are made up of many cells, but all the cells perform their function individually, just like characteristic of a prokaryotic organism.
Okay. Ma'am, why are these prokaryotic cells so small?
Okay, a nice question you have asked here. Okay, let me proceed little bit here. Then with the help of this slide, I think I can explain it better. Okay, so yes, prokaryotic cells, already we have seen that prokaryotic cells are much smaller than eukaryotic cells.
Yeah.
And its surface area, as you know, anything which is smaller in size, its surface area will be more. If you compare it, take proportion with its volume, a smaller sized substance has got more exposed surface area. In this cell you find, this is bacterial cell. Here also, as I had told you, this is the nuclear material remains directly embedded in the cytoplasm. There is no covering. So such type of so-called nucleus is very primitive and it is called as nucleoid. Apart from that, you find these cells are single membrane organism, we say. They are single membrane cell. What does it mean? Here a single membrane is present. What is the single membrane? Here you can find just below the cell wall the membrane which is called as plasma membrane. That is the single membrane. And here inside the cytoplasm there is no other membrane bound organelle present. So most of the cell organelles like mitochondria, chloroplast, endoplasmic reticulum, etc., they are absent in prokaryotic cell. So your question was why they are so small. I think you have got your answer because I told you if they are small, their surface area will be more. And these cells, you know, say take example of a bacteria. Bacteria is remaining in its surrounding and from the surrounding directly it is absorbing food materials. So if its surface area is more, it will be more in contact with the surrounding. So it can absorb more amount of food materials. So this is a survival strategy, you can say.
Okay. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Second point is it has got very primitive type of so-called nucleus, okay, genetic material which is present here. That is also not much. Very few genes are present in it, and these genes will not be able to handle control over a large cell. Okay, that at the corners of large cell it won't be able to provide informations. That's why they are small in size.
Okay.
Bacteria divide at very fast rate. You might have heard that after every 20 minutes, if surrounding condition is very much proper, then they divide at very large rate, unlike eukaryotic organisms. Okay. So this, you know, the large rate of reproduction helps them to change their environment very rapidly. You know that when milk, little bit of curd we mix, milk is getting converted to curd after some time.
Right.
After a few hours, depending on if the temperature is higher. So lactic acid bacteria converts this.
Okay.
Understand? Due to the high rate of reproduction, they are able to do.
But why is it so, ma'am? Why do bacteria like reproduce at such a high rate?
Okay, nice questions you're asking. Now see here, you've seen no in previous slide. You remember that you've seen they have got. Let's look here again. They have got genetic material which is directly embedded inside cytoplasm, and simpler type of genetic material which can divide very fast. And as they're in contact of cytoplasm, so this rate of division is very fast. Okay, that is one reason. And second reason is, as I had told you, they have got a single membrane around them. So through single membrane, food material is getting in the cell at very fast rate. So the cell is getting enough amount of food material very soon, and it can divide also very fast because of its simple type of genetic material. So this fast rate of reproduction is possible in bacteria.
Okay.
So let's proceed for eukaryotic cell. Eukaryotic cells possess a definite nucleus. You can find here a definite nucleus. Here genetic material is surrounded by two layers of membrane, and the whole thing is called as nucleus. Apart from that, you find several membrane-bound organelles like mitochondria. If it is a plant cell, then chloroplast will be present. There will be endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi bodies, lysosomes. So all these different types of cell organelles which are membrane bound by a single membrane or bound by double membrane, they are found in eukaryotic cells. So eukaryotic cell, we can say they're multi-membrane cell against that single membrane cell of prokaryotic cells. Okay, so eukaryotic cells, what is the size? You know, these eukaryotic cells have got different sizes. Usual size is, you'll find which cells are metabolically active. These cells are normally smaller. The answer we have got there when we are doing eukaryotic cells, as prokaryotic cells were smaller, their metabolic rate was higher. So usually metabolically active cells are smaller in size. But if a cell again, cell shape depends on what type of function it is performing. So depending on the function, if the cell has to be larger in size, then these metabolically active cells will be columnar or they'll be cylindrical in shape. Apart from that also, you'll find for removal of their products from within the cell, they also possess several finger-like projections over them. Okay, this type of finger-like projections are there, which help in the elimination and moving out of these materials very rapidly. Now let's come to shapes of the cell. What is the shape of a cell? Shape of the cell varies. Actually, it depends what kind of function is performing the cell. You take example of a neuron. Neuron has to transmit nerve impulses. So it is long in size so that fewer number of neurons will join end to end and their function, that is conduction of nerve impulse, will be carried smoothly and at a faster rate. You can also find they're having several branches at their both ends. These branches help them to communicate with other neurons. Likewise, you can find here skin cells. These are skin cells. Skin cells are flattened cells because skin is the organ over which large amount of pressure is exerted. From outside, atmospheric pressure is exerted. From inner side, other tissues are also exerting pressure. So under these two pressures, what is the base shape? It will become flattened. So that when it becomes flattened, its area will be more, pressure will be distributed, and it will not be broken down. Likewise, if you look at stomata, each guard cell is bean shaped and two guard cells enclose a small space in between them. This space allows giving out of the gases, like carbon dioxide moves in or moves out, and oxygen moves in or moves out, of course, seeing the surrounding condition at daytime and nighttime respectively. So depending on the function, cell shape varies. Eukaryotic cells are broadly divided under two heads: plant cells and animal cell. Whether it is a plant cell or animal cell, an eukaryotic cell or even a prokaryotic cell possesses three different parts: plasma membrane, cytoplasm, and nucleus. In case of plant cells, we find, in addition to these three components, another component is present, which is called as cell wall. So cell wall is this is the cell wall you can find here. Cell wall is rigid, hard, non-living outermost layer in a plant cell. Cell wall it is although rigid, tough, but it also has got some elasticity. Why, because you can find here this onion peel. When you observe onion peel under microscope, you might have observed these structures, these layers. This is the cell wall. Here also you can find this is the cell wall. Cell wall may be thin or thick. I was telling you that cell wall is being rigid, it is also elastic by nature. Why so? Because cell wall is made up of certain chemical substances. What are the chemical substances? Basically, you find here they are carbohydrate. Different types of carbohydrates are present, and wax is also present. Wax is a type of lipid or fat, you can say.
Okay.
These carbohydrates are basically cellulose, hemicellulose, pectin. This type of carbohydrates are present. Cellulose are very long structures, filamentous, fibrous structures. You can see here, you can look here. This cellulose forms fiber-like structures, which we call, as they're very small, so we call them as microfibrils. These microfibrils are long structures and they join end to end. As a result, what happens? When pulled or pushed, the cell wall can become stretched due to this microfibrillar nature. So it is also elastic by nature. Here you can ask me one question, that why cell wall is present in plant cells but not present in animal cell. This question quite often comes to our mind.
Okay.
Because plants are fixed. Most of the higher plants you find, they are fixed organisms, isn't it?
Yes.
So if in case of animals, if there is adverse surrounding condition, animals can move and can take shelter under some safe place, but plants will not be able to do that.
Right.
Apart from that, plants also prepare their food with the help of sunlight. That means that entire existence for green plants depends on sunlight. So what they cannot spread, all the plants cannot remain spread on the ground, then there will be only few plants will be able to spread. So that's why most of the plants, they move up, they move as if towards sunlight. So for that, they're standing up, standing erect. For standing erect, what is required? When we are standing erect, what is required? We have got a skeleton inside, a bony structure is present inside us. That's why we are able to stand erect. In animal kingdom, which animals do not have a bony skeleton like us, they lie flat on the ground, they cannot stand erect. So plants do not have bones, but still, they can attain very great height. How is it possible? It's possible because of the cell wall. Cell wall itself is rigid and it provides support from the outside of the cell, and it helps the plant to stand straight. Apart from providing protection, it also helps as a skeleton. Okay. So next we'll come to plasma membrane. Plasma membrane is present in all the cells, whether it is plant, microbes or animals. everywhere plasma membrane is present. In case of animals, plasma membrane is the outermost layer. But in case of plants, plasma membrane is just next to cell wall. Yes, cell wall is non-living. I think I have told you, but plasma membrane is a living membrane.
Okay.
Our living entity is possible because of plasma membrane. So you can well understand how important it is. Okay. So this plasma membrane is thin, delicate structure which remains surrounding the cell.
Okay. Ma'am, before you go further, I just wanted to remind you that we have got 4 minutes left.
Time flies very soon, isn't it?
Soon.
So here we see the chemical structure of plasma membrane. Plasma membrane is made up of lipids and proteins basically. Here we can see that lipids form two layers. Here the blue stock layers you find, so there are two layers of lipids and proteins are present here and there. You can find here proteins are present in two different forms. Some proteins are completely embedded throughout and they are existing throughout lipid membrane. Such proteins are called as intrinsic proteins, and some proteins are present over the surface, superficially present over the surface. Okay, and now these surface proteins are called as extrinsic proteins. Apart from that, you can also find short chains of carbohydrates are present. These carbohydrates remain attached with lipids or with proteins. These carbohydrate chains are present towards the outer side of plasma membrane, that is towards not towards cytoplasm side but towards outside. Towards cytoplasm side, this kind of carbohydrates we do not find. Now, basically, we are talking about membrane-bound organelles. What do they mean? There are certain organelles inside eukaryotic cells. These organelles are bound by membrane. Endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi bodies, they are bound by single membrane. Chloroplast, mitochondria, they are bound by two membranes. And it has been found all these membranes are basically similar to plasma membrane. The basic arrangement of layers of lipids and proteins, they are similar here. But it has been also found metabolically active cell organelles like chloroplast, mitochondria, etc. They are having more proteins over their membranes than other cell organelles which are metabolically less active.
Okay.
Now, so here you may ask the question, why more proteins are present on metabolically active cell organs? The reason is, see, these bulges which you find, all these are nothing but proteins. Now, when an organelle has to be metabolically active, naturally it will require many different types of chemical substances to enter so that chemical reactions will take place within them. They will also require food materials. They will also require a more number of water molecules. Actually, these structures, these proteins which you see here, some of them act as enzymes and some allow entry of substances. Entry of the substances from outside to inside of the cell organelle. So, metabolically active cell organelles have got more proteins in them.
Okay. So, let's take functions of plasma membrane in the next session. We are going to wrap up the session here. Thank you for the explanation, and yes, I'll be looking forward to the part 2 of this topic, cell, a fundamental unit of life. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us. Thank you to all the viewers as well for joining, for understanding how the cell functions and there are so many terms related to the cell, the just topic cell, because there are so many subtopics as well. Stay tuned, don't go anywhere, because we are coming back with another session, and this is a Sanskrit session for all the class 9th students, जिसका टॉपिक है कल्पतरु। कल्पतरु क्या होता है ये जानने के लिए आप हमारे साथ बने रहिए, और संस्कृत का ये सेशन लेकर हम बहुत जल्दी ही हाजिर होने वाले हैं। आप तब तक अपना ध्यान रखिए, और रिस्क अभी भी है तो आप प्लीज़ प्रिकॉशंस ज़रूर लीजिएगा। नमस्कार।